This is Terry Howe from the Talkback Fans Podcast, and you're listening to the Barbecue Central Show with the incomparable host, Greg Rempe.
Start the game! Let's go!
We'll do it live. Okay. Well, do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
So to get that perfect barbecue, you use wood. Are you sure it's safe? Whatever. We put the lighter fluid on, strike the match, and... Oh! Should we call the fire department? That might be a good idea.
Good evening and welcome to the really big Barbecue Central Show. This is the show that talks about all things important in the world of barbecue and grilling. The show originating from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame city, Bomb City, USA, Cleveland, Ohio, the barbecue capital and capital of the NFL shenanigans world, as it were, on the North Coast. I'm your program host, Greg Rempe. Happy to have you aboard here on your Tuesday evening's live fire fun and frivolity show. If you want to jump in on the show tonight this evening, here's how you do that.
You can get in touch with the show by sending an email to Greg at bbqcentralshow.com. Follow us on all the social media channels at BBQ Central Show. And be sure to subscribe to the show podcast feed on your favorite podcast platform.
Anything else you want to find out about the show can be found at the main website, thebbqcentralshow.com. And here's what's happening in case you can get the newsletter. It is a brand new month. We are now in August, and joining me that very first Tuesday in the very first interview segment each and every month, we find the co-creator of How to BBQ Right and the pitmaster of Killer Hogs competition team, Malcom Reed, joining us for his monthly segment. Much has transpired in the last month since we had him on the last time. You would recall, and I'll bring this up at the lead here in just a few minutes, as we were transitioning out of our interview segment in July, I had a toss-out question, or a toss-away question, throw-out question, I think is what they call it. And I had asked Malcom if he had ever used mayonnaise as a binder on, I said beef. I kept it very non-specific. And as you follow me on social media, I got a good month or so out of mayo, specifically on brisket, specifically with some guy named Dick Paste. And the list goes on if you followed the show and followed social media. So what I thought was a, again, throwaway question right at the end, just to ask something to take up a few minutes, spawned something that has gotten legs over the last month or so. Deuce Raymond has cooked a brisket with mayo. He's the one that really got the fire can going, or the fire going, brought the gas can to the fire. And then somebody that'll be joining us at the end of the show, Joe Martinez, longtime fan of the show and friend of show, also did a brisket with mayo as a binder. So this has really taken off. It might be a thing. We might be seeing mayo all over the place here over the next month, or remainder of summer, as it were, and we'll see how that goes. But nonetheless, Malcom Reed joining us 14 past the first hour. Then we will be joined by a first-time guest. If you like getting the heads up on all the breaking news in the live fire industry, especially on the business side, you should, A, be subscribing to me on social media, and I'll tell you how to do that here in a second, but you should all be visiting this website. Cookoutnews.com's founder, Wes Wright, will join us for the very first time, and we'll talk to Wes about his background, how he got into the Cookoutnews.com website, what he's writing about, and what you can expect as not only a visitor to his website, but I believe he has a newsletter that you can sign up for that he sends out semi-regularly. So just another avenue to get all the business that's happening and transacting here over the last 8 months now. We're 2 days into 8 months, believe it or not, and there's been a lot of business this year, as we know. That'll close the first hour, then we'll move to the second hour, and we will find friend of the show and former KCBS CEO Emily Detweiler joining us for the first time. Sans anything smoked or live fire. That's the first time she'll be joining the show. When she was with Smithfield, she was instrumental in getting Smithfield to sponsor the show, which they still do to this day, thanks to Laura Paul and the gang out there. But she was the one that got that rocket ship off the ground and into outer space. And then, of course, going away from Smithfield as they were moving everybody out of that Kansas City location over to the Virginia location. She didn't want to do that. Found a position at the KCBS as CEO. Took that, ran it for about 3 years, and just recently gave her resignation and is now out of all responsibility there. So we'll get a little refresher on how that all came to be, and then we'll talk about her time at KCBS as CEO, what she didn't realize was going to happen when she was in there, some of her biggest accomplishments that she thinks. We'll also perhaps talk a little TV and some other things, and of course what she's going to be up to going forward these days. So Emily Detweiler at 14 past the second hour. And then, as I had mentioned a couple minutes ago, closing out the show, first-time guest of the show, but one of the longer-time listeners, the pitmaster of Smokin' Joe's Barbecue Pit, which is a budding YouTube channel, Joe Martinez. And we'll talk it top to bottom, side to side, belly to belly. Oh my, mayo-covered brisket as a binder and what it actually turns out product-wise. He shot a whole video. It's great. So go to subscribe to his channel if you don't already, and then you can watch the brisket mayo or the mayo binder brisket video. Let's call it that. You can see from start to finish what he did. And of course, as he should, he gave me full credit for coming up with this. Yes. Thank you, Joe. Continuing to cause controversy wherever you go, and nobody appreciates that more than me. Malcom Reed, Wes Wright, first hour. Emily Detweiler, Joe Martinez, second hour. Don't forget, you can follow me socially, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat at BBQ Central Show. Live video feeds of the show can be found at Facebook and Twitch/BBQ Central Show. Also over on YouTube/RD Rempe. And, of course, we have live audio on Clubhouse as well. So let's start here this evening because I love to do this. This happened last Thursday, but it might as well have been last night because I'm still on fire about it. It's never happened to me before, and now it might be the question I lead with all guests for the duration of the evening, which is this. We went downtown last Thursday, went to Merwin's Wharf on the kind of central side of the flats, not east or west bank, central bank, middle bank. Had a few drinks at the Merwin's Wharf where some of the daughters work, and then moseyed uptown to the Chocolate Bar. Chocolate Bar founded in Cleveland, but there's a few other fledgling locations across the region here. And it's, according to reviews, hit and miss. We've never had a bad outing at Chocolate Bar. We've always had a great time. They have an extensive martini list. When I was drinking, that paid particular fancy to me. They have a great dessert menu. The food has been definitely serviceable. Nothing you're writing home about. Nothing life-changing. There's much better food restaurants in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame city, but this one is fine. It's great. It's right on the top side of East 4th Street, which is the happening street on the east side of town. And it's a really good jump-off point or close-down point, depending what you're up to. And this is what happened. My wife has a cousin. Her husband were also up here for dinner. We made the reservations. We show up. There's hardly anybody in there. And my wife's cousin orders the filet mignon on the menu. It's $29 steak, so it's not high-end. She orders it filleted and well done. Okay. Cast your dispersions as you may. Not something I would do. But she's paying for it. That's what she wants. We're at a restaurant. Fine. Well, the order is taken by the server, who was dynamite, by the way. Great suggestions. Navigated us through the menu. Made all great choices for those of us that couldn't decide. And then came back a few minutes later and told our friend, Leah, I'm sorry, we can't cook the steak as you want it. The kitchen is refusing. And I said, okay, well, obviously I see what's going on here. Somebody's ordering a hammered steak. They don't want to get caught in the middle of something, or have us complain at the end. I said, send over the chef or the manager. We'll talk about it. So somebody shows up, no chef's jacket, and says, yeah, we're not cooking the steak like that. And I said, okay, well, I'm releasing anybody of responsibility. Just cook it. That's what she wants. No problem. Everybody's fine. He refuses again the second time and becomes a little surly about it. Says he's not comfortable about cooking a steak that way. He doesn't feel like he can send that out in good conscience. I said, relieve yourself of any issues that you might be having. Cook the steak like that because that's what you want. No, we have a sous vide process. That's going to hurt the whole deal, and I just don't feel comfortable serving a steak to you like that. And for the fourth time, he refused again. And then it became heated, like an argument, and I said, look, we're the customer. There's plenty of choices here. She wants a hammered steak. Take the steak out of the sous vide, which you can do. Butterfly it, and hammer that steak. In fact, the more hammered, the better, because that's what she wants. Is that something that we can agree on that you will do? Because we're ready to walk out. I was ready to walk after the first no. Luckily, he relented. Oh, by the way, she loved the hammered steak. But the fact that this guy is all up in my ass telling me that he's not going to cook a steak because he doesn't like the way we are ordering it. We're not guests of the chocolate bar. He's not paying for our dinner. He's not allowing us some type of promotion. None of that. He's just being a dick. House managers, don't refuse to cook stuff. Show your issue, voice your concern, and then say, hey, if that's the way you want it, fine. Don't be like this dick and refuse 3 times before I have to go get up in your business. It was very uncomfortable, but I will do that. And don't hide behind sous vide. Give me a break. That's lazy steak cooking. Hey, guess what? New sponsor announcement. That's right, John Furman with Bub and Mothers. What's the first thing you think of when you think of the state of Maine? I can tell you for me, it's definitely not great barbecue until Bub and Mothers came along. How a rub that is so flavorful and versatile come from a state known for lobster and winter. Bub and Mothers is a veteran-owned gourmet spice blend company that's only barbecue company using real Maine ingredients from real Maine companies. The rubs are 100% natural, lower in salt than just about anything else you're seeing available on the shelves today. While it's handcrafted and blended to be used on anything that used to have fur, fins, or feathers, fans of the rub are actually using them on everything from avocado toast to fried zucchini. There's even a restaurant using it to make rubs in their cocktails. You can see all the recipes at their website, bubandmothers.com. Both flavors have won honors from the International Flavor Awards 2 years in a row. The rubs were used as guest judge gifts on Beat Bobby Flay, and competition cook teams have gotten multiple calls using Bub and Mothers flavors. Both the Down East Dinah Dust and the Heat and Honey can be used interchangeably. Once you've tasted them, your imagination will come up with many ways to use them. You can smoke it, you can grill it, fry it, and in the dead of the Maine winter, you can even get a fantastic barbecue flavor from your oven or broiler with it. So take it from me and head over to Bub and Mothers and order the gourmet dry rub with Maine attitude. And know that a portion of every proceed is donated to the veterans charities. Please tell them the Barbecue Central Show and Greg sent you. Bub and Mothers, B-U-B, the letter N, Mothers, M-U-T-H-A-S. We're back with Malcom Reed right after this. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting live from the Barbecue Central Show studios in Cleveland, Ohio. You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
Welcome back. This portion of the show being brought to you by cookinpellets.com, your number one source for quality wood pellets for all of your pellet-driven cookers. Where do you go to find them? Cookinpellets.com. You can buy them there. You can also peruse the other items that they have for sale. That's cookinpellets.com. CB and the gang out there at cookinpellets.com. We thank them for their continued support of the show. As I told you a handful of moments ago, it is the second day in October. That's a new month. It is a first Tuesday. And we are joined by YouTube sensation, barbecue championship pitmaster, and friend of this show, Malcom Reed. Hey, Malcom.
What's happening, Greg?
I am happy to have you on board here. I'm going to ask you two questions right off the bat. Did you know that they were making barbecue rubs in Maine?
Man, I did not. That's new to me.
Are you excited should I give you a couple test bottles and see what Maine has to offer?
Yeah, man, I'd love to try them.
Yeah. Are there roughly 7 billion rubs now?
It's got to be close, ballpark.
I mean, as a business guy, we're going to talk a little business here during the segment, but when you're looking at a market to attack, whatever industry, but we're obviously live fire here, at what point would you do a survey of what's existing and go, this might be a sector of the market that might be a little saturated? I would say 7, 8, 9 years ago, we could start making that argument, but here in 2022, it almost seems like rubs are like cookbooks. You're not doing it to like make money, but it's out there to get a brand out. Maybe you can make a couple bucks, but when would you decide, maybe I want to leave this alone and focus maybe more in this niche of the industry?
I mean, that's hard to say. I guess it's up to each individual person. I think if you've got a brand, why not? Especially if you're known for, cooking, barbecue, whatever, making rubs first. If that's your thing, go for it. Because I know it's a saturated market, but it seems like there's room for a lot of people in it because rubs are so, local homegrown things. I mean, when we go to a region of a country and there's someone, they've got their favorite rubs. I don't care what it is. I mean, of course, there's some national brands that stand out that you see everywhere. But I don't care where you go. Somebody's got a recipe that they've had for years that that's what makes barbecue great. Everybody thinks they can do it better than the next guy. So, it's a competition thing and don't even realize it.
Malcom Reed joining us here on the show. HowToBBQRight.com is website. And, of course, you should be subscribing to him over on YouTube if you aren't already. Second question that was impromptu. I just relayed a story on the way out of that opening segment where a guy who was passing himself off actually as the executive chef, but had no chef's jacket. Executive chefs love to wear the jacket that also says executive chef on it. He had nothing of the kind, but introduced himself as executive chef and then refused me 3 times after I said, hey, I get it. Nobody gets it more than me. We're making fun of her. I would never order a steak like that, but this is what she wants. And 3 times he said, I don't feel comfortable letting a steak like that go out of my kitchen. Even after I said, I get it, I understand it, I feel it. However, we're the customer, and unless you don't have the steak, which you do because it was not told to us in advance of her ordering that you were out of the filet, if this is what she wants, give me what she wants. Have you ever run into that?
I've never had a chef argue with someone how to do it. Now, I may have I've seen times where they'll recommend something else, different preparation maybe, but a lot of the restaurants that I've seen, they'll have a disclaimer right there on the menu that we're not responsible for a steak ordered well done. I know you've probably seen it, and that's fine. That's like their disclaimer, but this is America, man. If you want a well done steak, order a well done steak. I mean, if I was the waiter, I'd probably recommend chicken nuggets or somebody says so they want it well done. But like I said, it's America, man. If you like it that charred up and overcooked and ruined a $high steak, go for it.
Yeah, it was the first time I had run across that. The only place I could see it is if you go to a Morton's or some really high-end independent steakhouse. But I would just assume that even if you go to a place like that, the person or the consumer that is a well-done, or as I call it, the hammered steak eater, probably weeds themselves out of that restaurant to begin with. They don't want to go in and drop $65 or $75 or $100+ on some kooky dry-aged filet or 16-ounce filet that's just never probably going to see well done. And it's really expensive, and they just don't want to put themselves through that. Why do it there when you can go to Outback or Texas Roadhouse or Longhorn and get something for $25 or $30 like we got here, the chocolate bar, have them cut it open, have them hammer the shit out of it. And then you get it and you're out $70, $80 to the cheap.
That's exactly the case to do that. I mean, I don't think I've never seen it in a fancy steakhouse. I guess you'd call like Morton's or something like that. I've never seen anybody order anything well done, but you know, you go to Texas Roadhouse, you see it all the time. I mean, I see people order, and I've been with people that have done it before, and that's how they like it. So
I'm a big believer.
Who am I to judge?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm a secret conspiracy theorist on Outbacks and Texas Roadhouse. You don't really go for the meat. You're going for that bread and that sweet butter. I think that's what everybody really likes. That's what they're filling up on, and then steaks like dessert or something like that.
And the cheap margaritas.
Yeah, absolutely. Malcolm, in your latest podcast, you talked a bit about the boom and then bust of the barbecue and grilling industry. I'm going to have Wes Wright on in the next segment, who's actually a newer website covering the business of barbecue and grilling. But as somebody who is a retailer, you have, Malcolm's barbecue shop there, you're moving products. How are you seeing it from that side of the business?
Well, I mean, I think it's just the way the economy is going now. I mean, things are tough. It's tough all over. So you're not seeing people spend the money on the big ticket items. I mean, grill sales have slowed down. Larger stuff slowed down, but the food stuffs is still doing pretty well. I think people are spending their money on groceries. They're spending their money on gas, and they're cooking at home. And so, you're selling rubs, you're selling sauces, but when it comes down to selling all these higher end accessories or grills or anything like that, people are waiting on those, seeing what the market's doing. I mean, with interest rates what they are, I mean, there was a time I remember it hasn't been long. You started seeing finance options for grills pop up on people's websites. And I mean, when we're getting to times like that, it seems like it's taking advantage of people. Yeah, giving somebody the opportunity to buy a high dollar item that they didn't have the cash for, but people just aren't spending their money like that. And so when these companies went public, it couldn't have been the worst time, for, I guess, Weber, Traeger. There's a few others that went public. But, man, their stocks are taking a bad hit. And I think it's just because combination of COVID, war in Ukraine, I mean, supply chain logistics, and then, interest rates. We've got times that we've never seen, so that's tough. But don't listen to me for finance advice. I'm a barbecue guy.
Do you think also, aside from all of those factors that you had mentioned, that over the past 2 years, people just won out and kind of shot their wad on a number of cookers? Maybe it would have taken them 5, 6, 7 years to accumulate, but over the last 2 years, they're trapped at home, so they just gobbled them all up in one go.
I think so. I mean, you got to think you're buying an item that you hope to last you 5 to 10 years when you drop $1,000 on a grill. Another thing, we've got so many different manufacturers on the market now. It's kind of saturated, like the rub market. There used to be just a few players in it, but now you've got multiple manufacturers that are all making similar style or similar priced products, and so it's got to be tough on those guys.
Do you think we're going to be in a position now, as things are tightening up, that some companies are going to be weeding themselves out, whether they're doing it on purpose or not?
I think we're already seeing it with layoffs and, supply. I mean, when they don't have inventory to sell, I mean, there's no choice but to, tighten up or close shop or whatever. You've got to do the best to right the ship you can. And for larger companies, I guess that could be tough depending on their market share.
You've been in this industry a long time. I didn't figure we were going to be talking about business this long. But I mean, you've been around a long time. You've seen business transacted in a number of different ways, and then you have these very weird standalone years that we had for COVID, where everything was going nuts. If you were a barbecue restaurant, you might have suffered if you didn't pivot properly. But even a lot of those made it much better than any of the traditional restaurants did that had to close and figure out ways to now get to the curb or order through phones, what have you, forcing them to catch up to present-day technology. But everybody else in the live fire industry was making hay like crazy. Doesn't it seem like the highest level decision makers, especially in the bigger companies, would say, this feels really good right now? I mean, we're really in it. We're really making a lot. We're having record sales. By the way, none of this makes sense. We can't forecast. We can't plan on this. We should be saving, or maybe we should be trimming some profit margins here or there, just to be fair in the industry, because I have to believe, I'm just speculating, that this isn't something that we can bank on. We shouldn't be building huge factories or growing distributorships or just blindly trying to blow out as quickly as possible, thinking that this is going to be the new normal. My thought would be, let's be controlled, let's ride the wave, but let's also realize that in year 3 or year 4, this could really tick back, flatten out to what normal is, which was not a record-breaking year for a lot of manufacturers beforehand.
Well, I think that's what they probably should have done, or a lot of companies should, to take that conservative approach. But I mean, we're just living in times where people want it right now. So they're thinking the sky's the limit. If we're on this high, we're going to keep going. But there's got to be a place to where it stops. I mean, and I think we've already seen where the climb stopped. Now we're seeing the pullback. How far it's going to pull back, I don't know. I think the great thing we have going for us is that people love to cook at home. So, I mean, you're still going to see people interested in barbecue. In the past few years, we've got more eyes. Barbecues became kind of its own phenom. It's its own, major food group in the United States and in the world now. And I think that's here to stay. People like it. They like the idea of being able to cook this food for their friends, for their family. And that's kind of what it's at its purest. But, when you throw the business side of it, that's a whole nother animal.
So let's look at one of the cookers that has really made a mark on the industry. I didn't really see it making this big of a mark, but due to price point, due to almost a nostalgia of, I'm talking about the Blackstone flat tops, of course. You have a nostalgia of like a diner, a flat top look feel. You can do anything on it. You can technically cook any food that you want on a breakfast, lunch, dinner, everything in between. A lot of food at one time, depending on what kind of a cooker you're getting. And now you see also a handful of different manufacturers getting in to the flat top arena. Blackstone is the leader in my mind, but Blue Rhino makes one, Next Grill makes one, Loco makes one. I think Traeger had filed patents for bringing some kind of flat top to the market, which they probably won't be talking about, but the patents have been filed. So this is obviously a newer sector to the whole live fire scene. Do you have a Blackstone, and what's your thoughts on flat top cooking?
I do. And, I don't think they knew it was going to be as big a phenom as it has turned out to be. I love cooking on mine. The one thing about it, the price on them is fantastic. I mean, you can get a 4-burner one that's a pretty good size one. I think it's a 48-inch one. You're only spending, $300 or something like that. They're not expensive. And so it's a great way to cook a lot of food. I think you do get that nostalgia of, it's like diner cooking, the smash burgers, all the stuff you see at Waffle House, all that, the hibachi. You can do all that at home, and people like it. It's something that's different. I mean, there's been versions of a flat top around that people have been putting on grills for a long time. I mean, we've seen the cast iron versions. We've seen the metal inserts that go on grills, but there was nothing that was standalone and kind of a dedicated cult following of it that the Blackstones become. And I think that's the first one people call. They don't call them flat tops. They call them Blackstones. Mm-hmm. And they hit a home run with that.
It's like the Kleenex of the flat top cooker business at this point. How common is it where you are there in Hernando and the greater metropolitan Hernando area, where we could walk through backyards? Maybe it's a little different because you're technically in the South here, but interested anyway. If we walk through backyards, do we see a majority of homes that have some kind of charcoal cooker, some kind of gas grill, and now some type of flat top cooker? Will you see 3 or 4 cookers in the backyard, or is that more the exception than the rule?
I think the propane grill has kind of gone away, at least people in my circles. I'm sure, it's probably still the number one selling grill, and they're higher end, and people, put them in these outdoor kitchens. But my friends aren't buying propane grills. They're getting a smoker. They're having a charcoal grill, whether it's a Weber or a PK or something of that version that's just a quick charcoal grill. And then they're getting a Blackstone or a flat top. Used to, you saw some fryers. There are some pizza ovens that are kind of gaining some popularity, but a lot of that's just, pizza's kind of a niche thing. So I don't know if they're going to stand the test of time, but I think if I'm building an outdoor kitchen, I'm going to have a smoker, a grill, and a flat top. That's going to be my 3 that's going to get built in it. And just because you can do anything you want with those.
Malcom Reed joining us here on the show. The website, howtobbqright.com. And, of course, subscribe to him over on YouTube if you aren't already, and catch his live fire videos when he puts them out. In one of the more recent TikTok videos, I think it was, that you made, maybe it was Instagram, you made a very summery cocktail called the Pineapple Whip. So if you are amenable to giving us the recipe, just in case we're looking to knock a few back this coming weekend.
Yeah, man, it's a delicious one too. It was my version of, I know you've probably seen the Pineapple Whip at Disney World. It's kind of like the ice cream thing where it's got that creamy flavor to it, but it's got the pineapple. That was what I was going for in a cocktail. So I started with, you got to have pineapple juice, but the secret is the whipped vodka. And we have a brand in our liquor stores called Pinnacle. I'm sure you probably have it in Cleveland.
Yep.
But there's other versions of it, but it's a whipped cream flavored vodka. And you pair that with some Malibu coconut rum. So I usually do about 2 ounces each of those, and then about 4 ounces of pineapple juice, and top it off with Sprite and make it in a 32-ounce cup. And it's filled full of ice. And, man, it's a summertime treat. And it don't take but a couple of them with 4 ounces of booze in it.
Yeah. I was going to say, is this one of those things where by the third one, it's like 3 pineapples on the floor kind of a thing?
Yeah, that's it. You got to watch them, especially with the ladies, because they love them.
Yeah, that does seem like a nice summery time drink. Before I let you go tonight, Malcom, and appreciate the time, I wanted to get an update from you on the continued effort on the Palmer Home fundraiser, where you're sitting at right now, and what are the goals? How can we help out?
Well, I mean, I know you've heard us talk about it on here before, but the Palmer Home's a local organization here in Hernando that helps out with the kids when they're, misplaced from their home, whether it be family problems or whatever. They try to keep them in a good environment, and we try to raise money to help feed them for a year. And they house 8 kids to a family. And we took it upon ourselves to feed 2 of these families this year. I think we've raised, the last time I checked, I think it was over $5,000 or $6,000, and we got a pretty big goal we're shooting for. And we're going to keep doing it until September. But you can go to palmerhome.org and find out more information. You can go to How to BBQ Right /Palmer, and it's on our website too. And Greg, we appreciate you letting us get a shout out for that, man. You've been a big help last year. I know your listeners stepped up and you did a match, and man, we appreciate the efforts of just helping us do that, because it is for a good cause.
Yeah, it's a cause I firmly believe in, and the offer continues to go out. And as we were kind of talking about this off air, you were a little concerned with where you were sitting at now, but as we talked it out a little bit, you said, hey, with the award that you can get, top 5 donors get to come down with a significant other, hang out with you for a day or so. It's going to be a big pig picking down your place. So people might be sandbagging a little bit to see what amount might win, so then they can come big at the end. So we might have to wait a couple months to see that big bull rush of cash come in to push you over the edge. However, that being said, I will say this. First one of my listeners that donates in and says, hey, Barbecue Central show, $1,000, a single donation, then I will certainly match that as we did last year. Just make sure that you put it in your notes or comments or whatever, so then Malcolm or Rochelle can get back to me and said, okay, we got a Barbecue Central show listener that has donated $1,000, and then I'll gladly match that. But just something that we're happy to do and support you in this way. Anything else I can let you talk about here, Malcolm, before I let you go tonight?
No, man, I just need you to plan to come to that pig picking too. You always got an open invite. So if you get somebody that steps up to the plate, you can bring them as your significant other if you want. Or
yeah, all right, that might be
we're
it.
gonna have a big time.
All right,
we're
sounds
gonna
good.
have a good time, man.
This is Malcom Reed. You can find him at howtobbqright.com or over on the YouTube channel, and you can find him right here the first Tuesday of every month. Malcolm, always appreciate the time.
Hey, thanks, Greg. We'll see you next month, man.
All right, there he is, Malcom Reed, right there.
You're listening to the #1 most downloaded barbecue and grilling podcast anywhere.
So,
the Barbecue Central Show.
That was a error in fire right there. Sorry about that. If that could be it, right? Malcolm has turned me on to a great idea. If somebody jumps up with $1,000 and works that back to Rochelle or Malcolm, so then I can go ahead and match your $1,000 donation. You can come as my significant other. I think you have to get your way there and then to location, but then they handle transportation and overnight accommodations, and then get you, and then we would get back to the airport. But that could be a bit of a encouragement to you if you're so inclined, or if you want to do it together. Let me know. Email me, and we'll work out the logistics on that as far as how our donations go in. Before we get to Wes Wright from cookoutnews.com, let me talk to you quickly about Green Mountain Grills, some of the best pellet cookers out there on the market today. A choice line to choose from, a prime line to choose from. Now, depending on what your level of A, budget is, and then B, what tech you want, and this could be limited coming up here shortly, as there is a presidential review going on between Traeger and Green Mountain Grills, so we'll see how that shakes out. And then if Green Mountain Grills will still be in business, we don't know about that yet. There's things in the works. In any case, if you don't want the tech, if you don't need the internal meat probes, and you just want a nice, solid cooker, one that I've owned for years, you want the choice line. If you want something that has a little bit more of a robust build, if you want to have something with 2 internal meat probes and look-in windows and Wi-Fi and then / app enableability, that's not a word. If you want to have app-enabled access so you can control that cooker right from the indoors and never go out, Prime line, that's the one you want. What's significant about Green Mountain Grills? Only selling through dealers. So find a dealer near you, visit the dealer, get educated, and then you'll be able to pick the best one for you. Then take it home. You'll be educated. You'll be successful right out of the box. But before you leave, get a bunch of accessories, and don't leave out the pizza oven insert. You have to get that. Nothing better than the pizza oven insert when it comes to Green Mountain Grills. It could be an heirloom if things go the way of the dinosaur for GMG, but I love it. We use it all the time. So fun. Pizzas are done 2-3 minutes, depending on how you run the stone, and everybody gets to make their own. It's fun. Pizza night. Pizza night every night. That's what I say. GreenMountainGrills.com. That's GreenMountainGrills.com. And we will be back with Wes Wright right after this. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the #1 most downloaded barbecue and grilling podcast anywhere. The Barbecue Central Show. Howard Stern, Jim Rome, Dan Patrick, and Greg Rempe. The Mountain Rushmore of talk show entertainment. Now, let's get back to the Barbecue Central Show.
And we thank Malcom Reed for joining us last segment. This portion being brought to you by Fireboard. Monitor up to 6 different temperatures simultaneously. Connect to Wi-Fi for cloud-based monitoring, or connect via Bluetooth. If you have Alexa or the Google Assistant in your home, you're in luck. Fireboard fully integrated with both. Find out more by visiting fireboard.com or call 816-945-2232 to ask questions, and then order yours immediately. My next guest tonight was put on my radar by my pal Scott Moody over at The Variable PR firm. He said, hey, have you ever read this website? It's full of barbecue and grilling news. He shot me the URL. I've been hooked ever since. There are reviews, there are reportings, there's breaking news. If you're like me, someone who loves the deets, then the Cookout News is the site for you. So let's go ahead and race to the hotline and welcome the creator of cookoutnews.com and first-timer to this show, Wes Wright, joining me. Hey, Wes.
Hey, Greg. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you making time for me this evening. Before we get into Cookout News, the website, what we can expect to read as we visit there, and I think a lot of us will become a regular destination across the internet nation for us. Let's get a bit of background on you before we talk about that. Where are you at in the country? What do you do professionally? And then we can build from there.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm up here in Metro Detroit. My background is I worked as a mechanical engineer a long time ago, switched over to finance, and now I work in mergers and acquisitions for a media company.
So are you dealing with the likes of Jay-Z and Beyonce, media like this?
No, it's business to business media. So like things like plastics is so much less entertaining.
Well, I mean, I don't know who doesn't love a good polypropylene or polypropylstyrene or something like that. That's very intriguing, very exciting. So do you have a long history in live fire? Is it something you grew up around?
Yeah, well, I grew up with the traditional Weber kettle charcoal grill. I grew up in the 80s though, so I used it with heavy amounts of starting fluid and things like that to to get it going. But then I graduated and got really into it about 3 to 4 years ago. I was living in Miami for a little while, then I moved to Atlanta, then I moved back here where I was in a house as opposed to an apartment. And that's when I could actually have a grill again. So that's when I got back into it.
Wes, as I do my background on you, I run across the press release that talks about the launch of the website May 5th of this year. How long had you thought about doing something like this, and what finally made you pull the trigger?
Yeah, so my website launched March 1st. I'd thought about it for a while though. If you go back a year plus, I played around a little bit with just making like cooking shorts on YouTube and things like that, just another way to interact with my hobby. Um, but while I was doing it, I thought, if you want to learn more about cooking, watch someone like Malcom Reed or something like that. I didn't feel quite authentic enough. So I thought about it a little more, especially over Christmas this year. And at my work, actually, I was seeing a lot of industry publications on things like wheelchairs and wheelchair industry news, right? And I couldn't find any industry news on outdoor cooking that was just purely dedicated to it. So I thought, oh, well, maybe I should start something like that. So I spent a few months learning how to create a website and doing all that. And yeah, launched March 1st, so around there.
What kind of traffic are you seeing?
I've actually been pretty happy with it. The first couple of months, you're writing and no one's looking at it at all. You just want anyone to read it. I'm at I think last month I had about 15,000 hits. So, not bad for, something that started in March.
Creatively, are you a writer by passion or something that you just like to do creatively? You'd mentioned that you've been an engineer a long time ago, but so obviously you're a smart guy, but writing takes a little bit different side of the brain there. Is that something you just enjoy doing and like the outlet?
Yeah, well, it's a good creative outlet. I didn't actually know if I would like it or not until I was doing it, and it's kind of a nice distraction, or it's different from what I do for a living. So, I find it fun to do and just kind of put my own spin on things like that.
Is the goal in the end to make cookoutnews.com a full-time job, or are you happy just watching it grow and you don't necessarily have a goal to transition into full-time?
Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever achieve that, having it full time. Kind of my goal right now. I'm just having fun with it. It's a good way to interact with my hobby. I have two little kids, so it takes a lot of time to barbecue and grill if I want to do it the way I want to do it. So it's a way I can interact with my hobby, just on throughout the day, and then when it gets cold too, and I can't grill quite as much. But I really just want to have fun with it now, see where it goes. I wanted to make it too, so that way, other enthusiasts had just new content that you could consume kind of year round. And as a way to, promote the industry, if you will. Like it's amazing to me how much the industry's transitioned towards tech, but yet there'll be a new grill release and it'll just show up on a website and you're like, oh, okay, I guess they released a new grill. I had no idea. So I think it'd be good to just kind of help promote the industry a little bit and see where it goes.
Are you looking to make any money at this, or are you making any money at this right now?
No, I'm losing money on it. No.
Oh, great.
Just
Wonderful
just
business
to get it going.
Of course.
Yeah, if I could break even, that'd be nice, but I'm not really dying for it.
Wes Wright joining us here on the show. Cookoutnews.com is the website. If you haven't visited before, I think you'll get a kick out of it and really enjoy what he's doing. Do you have a newsletter or something in addition, or should you just visit cookoutnews.com, a handful of times a week just to stay up?
Yeah, you can go to the website, obviously, and I have a newsletter that comes out Saturday mornings. I call it the Weekend Refuel, and you can subscribe to it on the website.
So there's many different live fire sites out there, which cover the happenings of the industry to some degree. Derek Riches reports on it, does reviews. AmazingRibs.com is probably the biggest barbecue and grilling website, although Derek would probably argue with that, and there's been issues between those two years ago. Nevertheless, Robert Moss is also a guy that reports on the industry. He writes the Q Sheet, and of course the guys over at the Smoke Sheet also report on the live fire industry in a variety of different ways. Where do you think you differ, and where do you think you guys are similar?
Yeah, I think there's definitely an intersection when you get to grill reviews and releases to some regard. Um, where I differ is, I kind of my background in engineering and mergers and acquisitions. A lot of my job is just researching companies. So I look through any public information that's out there. I go through filings with the SEC. I go through patents. I go through trademarks. I go through meeting minutes at, some locale out west where they want to build a pellet mill. So I think that kind of information is different. And I'm coming at from an angle of more like the tech and innovation side as opposed to necessarily the practical cooking, where some of those guys have that covered.
Where are you getting leads and scoops? Is it just from doing the research and going through trademark websites and patent websites, or are what are they called, deep throats reaching out to you? That sounds weird to say out loud. Are they reaching out to you and saying, hey, use me as a unnamed source, but so-and-so is going to be dropping this, or we're filing that?
Yeah, right now it's purely just research, and that's got me pretty far so far. It's a lot of people don't even know what's out there. Back in, I want to say, April, I reported a story about the Good Charcoal Company was raising capital, right? I found that in an SEC filing, and I interviewed their CEO, and he's like, "Where did you even hear about that?" He had no idea that was public information. So a lot of that's out there. I haven't gotten to the point where, I'm getting any scoops for the most part. So, hopefully that's the next step. Once I get a little more traffic, it's a little more popularized. I'd love to get that point, or even, working with brands.
Do you have a recognition level in the industry at this point, would you say? And if so, what do you think it is?
Oh, I don't think so.
No.
It's so new. I think I'm happy to be here, Greg. So I think you're reading it and a couple other people. So
let's talk about a few of the bigger stories that have been going on recently. I'm not going to ignore the elephant in the room, which is the then boom and now bust of the barbecue and grilling sector. Not everyone is seeing the hits that Traeger, Weber, Pit Boss, Solo brands have been seeing. What do you attribute their non-success recently to, after they had 2-3 years of unrivaled success?
Yeah, I think a lot of that is they and this was something actually I looked at on my website. I did an analysis of Google Trends, and they were at the highest level in history through the pandemic. No surprise, right? And you had stimulus checks where they were seeing literally on their POS systems right when they're handed out, they're getting grill sales. And I think the grill companies, for whatever reason, thought that would continue, because you'd hear them on their analyst calls for earnings talk about how they think that's going to be sticky and that's going to remain. And I don't know why you would think that. So I think that success is comparative. When I did my analysis, I saw that we're back at the levels of 2019, and with maybe even a little incremental growth there. Mm-hmm. So it's normal. It's just when you're comparing it to what they've been doing, and especially if you staffed up to have that continue indefinitely, you're going to run into some problems. It's probably harder for companies like Weber and Traeger because they're public, so they have to answer to investors who, every quarter want to see growth. Some of the more private ones, I would hope they could ride it out a little more, but time will tell there.
I was talking with Malcom Reed last segment, and I was asking him, he's got a little, rub and grill shop out there in Hernando, Mississippi. And, he noticed that grills had slowed, but there were a lot of the other consumables / commodities that continued to run through the store at a pretty good rate. I had asked him, if you're a top man or woman running one of these companies, and you thought the best idea or the best bet to make over the last 2 years that we had never seen before was to bet long on this success and build extra facilities and all this other stuff. To me, that seemed like an incredibly poor thought, terrible business. to do something like that. And in my instant chat, there were people saying, hey, I think what you're failing to recognize, Greg, is that the CEOs are not everyday grillers like you and I, and are a little bit aloof. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think some more so than others, but you can hear it. I don't know if your listeners know this, but if you're publicly traded, you have to go to and do investor presentations to drum interest for your brand. And you'll hear, like, Traeger gave an investor presentation last month, and it was audio only over the internet, but the CEO asked, like, who's ever grilled or is familiar with grilling or something like that, and it was crickets. So their whole analyst community is people that don't even really know the product, and they ask questions about inventory levels or ROI or sell through or stuff like that. It's not product oriented at all. So I think there's a lot of that going on.
I had heard near the tail end of last year from some company owners that they were telling me inventory was building and retailers were not going to be in a position to take endless amounts of containers coming from overseas like they had been the previous 2 years. Did you hear any of the same?
Yeah, I hadn't heard that. I knew they were they were getting their inventory levels up because of what was going on with shipping. So that's how some people dealt with the whole, shipping calamity that was earlier this year and the end of last, is they just were getting tons and tons of inventory. I hadn't heard that though. No.
I had John Morris. Is that his name? Oh dear. I apologize. CEO of Solo Brands, John Maris. There it is.
John Maris.
And,
yeah.
So he was on maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago, whatever it was. We were talking about the brand, and he's another one that's suffering, just like a lot of these other public companies that went off really big and have really ate shit all the way through since they launched. Smokeless fire pits is the Solo claim to fame, or mostly smokeless. There was a fire pit from BioLite that was on your website that looked like you'd done a review on. Can you tell me a little bit about that and how it compares and contrasts to a Solo?
Yeah. So the idea with a Solo stove, is there's a secondary burn on the top. They have air that gets preheated, that gets introduced to the fire, and as well as quite a bit of oxygen through the holes within the unit. And the idea is that here helps create a smokeless fire. The BioLite Fire Pit Plus that they came out with it's a product that's been around for a little while, but what they do differently is they actually have a battery pack on it that powers air jets. So there's 3 air jets, 2 at both sides of the top and 1 at the bottom. And how smoke is produced for the most part is if it's an incomplete combustion. So any moisture that's within your fire, and that's going to cause the combustion process to stop. So you're not going to just yield carbon dioxide, and I think H2O is the chemical compound. So the idea here is it works with your phone, where you can control the fan. You lay out your fire, it introduces oxygen through forced air, and that creates a more perfect combustion process. And so that's how it's different. It's purely electric, the way that they accomplish it. I like the product too, though. It's rectangular, which is nice because when you're chopping wood, it's a rectangle. So some of the smaller Solo stoves, you have to cut ends off or things like that if you want to add to your fire. This one you can just build it up as is, and you can even charge your phone off it because it's a battery pack. So it's great if you're out camping.
Is it much like a Solo in the beginning? So I always tell people Solo, it's exactly as it says it's going to operate, except in the beginning, you have to get that initial burn. There is initial smoke, but once everything gets up and running, then you have enough heat where you get that secondary combustion at the top on the Solo stove, similar to the BioLite, or different because it is forced air, so there's really no smoke from start to finish?
Yeah, you have to get the fire going a little bit. And, as I'm sure your listeners know, not all wood's created equal. So you're looking for really dry wood. When I was testing it out, I got some that claimed it was kiln dried, but it was too heavy to feel like kiln dried, if you ask me. And that gave some smoke. So you need the right wood supply to go with it to get that smokeless burn. And yeah, there is some introduction to get it going first, But then once it's going, you can keep it going pretty smokeless.
What's the biggest story coming out this week you're working
on? Well, let's see. I saw a trademark today for Charbroil has 2 grills. I'm not quite sure what they're going to be, but they had a trademark out for 2 different barbecue grill names. And then I've been looking around at Pit Boss a little bit just because of some, rumblings about their performance. And I stumbled across some financials that they had out there when they bought the building that they're in Arizona. So I'll probably write an article on that as well.
Well, we'll be keeping an eye out. You can find those writings over at cookoutnews.com. It's Wes Wright. Wes, really appreciate the time, the history on how you got going, and we look forward to your writings' continued success.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
You got it. There he is, Wes Wright. Right there, cookoutnews.com. I think you'll really enjoy it. I love it. It's a great read. And then, as he said, sign up for that newsletter, and you get the refuel on the weekend, Saturdays. So you can go back and catch up on what you might have missed. Austin Parsons weighing in the instant chat. Love watching Greg trying to keep a straight face while scanning the chat and doing interviews at the same time. Hashtag fartless beans. That's right. Actually, there was a bigger thing going on that nobody probably understood what happened there, but it was a whole thing that happened around me that we got through. You might have saw me laughing on that as well. Before we wrap the first hour, I will talk to you about Yoder Smokers, designing and building all their products right here in the United States and building pride through craftsmanship and world-class customer service. That's the backbone of how they've built the company. This product has a approach which translates into what can be a truly bespoke style product that elevates gatherings with friends and family. Honored to have a trusted place in the backyards of America. From pellet grills to wood-fueled offset pits and charcoal grills, consistent blue ribbon flavor has become synonymous with the Yoder Smokers name. Make no mistake, Yoder Smokers' flavor-driven design, unique to each style of pit, and their team has developed to have their cookers perform time and time again while lasting the competition for generations to come. It's this generational thought that's rooted in the handmade products and defines the integrity of the core values, American-made quality, and endless flavor, the benchmarks of Yoder Smokers. Go to yodersmokers.com or find a dealer near you, and if they have stock, buy it because they are quickly building a backlog. Buy it if you see it and you want it. Don't wait. You'll be sorry. We're back to wrap the first hour right after this. Stick around. Be right back.
Continuing to produce incredibly mediocre content in an exceptionally professional way. You're listening and watching the Barbecue Central Show. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
And this portion being brought to you by Pit Barrel Cooker, the most unbelievable outdoor cooking device on the planet. Currently available in 3 sizes with a host of accessories. Whether you're a beginner or a professional, definitely a cooker you want to add to the arsenal. Visit pitbarrelcooker.com. and tell them the Barbecue Central Show sent you. And don't wait. There's a lot of great Pit Barrel videos that are crossing my Instagram and TikTok timelines right now. Not the least of which was a Parmesan-crusted rack of lamb. Looked delicious. I don't know if we're getting to it tonight. Peterbilt Pimp by day, pellet grill pimp by night, and hopefully, Dan, somebody that's actually going to be interviewing a company called Pimp My Grill sooner than later. How about that? We're bringing it all full circle right there. You're talking about pimping Peterbilts. I'm talking about pimping pellet grills. And then there's a company that's Pimp My Grill for pellet grills. It's going to be great. We thank Wes Wright for joining us last segment. Again, his website, if you want to check it out and sign up for his subsequent newsletter that comes out once a week on Saturdays, cookoutnews.com. That's cookoutnews.com, and get updated on all the Who would have thought we'd be in a environment now in 2022 where guys writing a blog or a website, a news website, about more of the tech, the business, the mergers and the acquisitions of the grilling industry. Really? There's that many tech stories for grill companies that he can actually write about them and not just continually sputter out the same story over and over? Yes. That's where we are in the state of the live fire industry right now. It's a tech industry, by and large. We're pointing to the second hour. Stick around. We'll be right back.
This is Brian Mayer, host of Hot Sauce Weekly, and you are listening to BCRN, all barbecue and grilling all the time.
Happy to have you aboard here for the really big barbecue show.
We cook because we have to, and we grill because we want to.
Hit me.
Fine, how's it going?
You have a great show. I'm a big fan.
Boing.
So what seems to be the problem here? This man looks like he's dead, and he's in the crackle.
Charbono! It's all about the charbono, dude!
Succulent fish. What?
He ate 54 wieners.
But listen, Lavernius, shut your face.
I'm shaking like a dog shit peach seeds.
We have top men working on it right now. Top men.
And just like that, we are into the second hour. It is the Barbecue Central Show, talking about barbecue and grilling related items of only the highest importance each and every week. Doing it live right here.
We'll do it live.
And we are also recording for podcast posterity for most of you to listen to the tune of almost 50,000 downloads this past month of July. How about that? Bigger and better than it ever has been. And I appreciate both live listeners and podcast listeners. Podcast listeners far outweigh the live listeners. The live listeners continue to be my favorite. So pick which side of the fence you want to be on already. Still to come on this show, Emily Detweiler, the former CEO of the Kansas City Barbecue Society. We'll be talking about her time there, why she left. I'll make a bunch of incredibly candid and reckless speculatory statements, which she can decide to answer or not. And we'll go from there, and then we'll also talk a little bit of TV, perhaps, and, of course, what she has left the KCBS to do full-time, and if that might be in the barbecue and grilling sector, although I doubt it. So stay tuned for that. And then closing out the show, our pal Joe Martinez from Smokin' Joe's Pit Barbecue, as we go over top to bottom mayo as a binder on brisket and what end results you get from that. But not only end results, what start results? Is it weird to put your hands in mayo and slather it all on a piece of meat? We're going to get all the down and dirty. It's going to be great. Chief C wrote a little earlier, I used mayo on a pork butt yesterday, and it was great. No aftertaste. Good for you, Chief C, but no pictures or no video and not giving me credit means it didn't happen. But you got on the show. Don't forget you can follow me socially at BBQ Central Show on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and the Snapper Snaps /BBQ Central Show on Facebook and Twitch for video feed /RD Rempy for a video feed over on YouTube as well. And we're also live audibly on Clubhouse if you would like to listen to the show that way and not have to watch the show. A lot of people like to do that. Coming up on the best moments of the Barbecue Central Show in 10 minutes or less this Friday, episode 240, coming to you from August 2013, and this week featuring a discussion with old friends of the show, a pair, Michael McDearman, McD as we call him, and South Carolina barbecue legend Jack Wayborn back on the show. All the way back in 2013, McD and Jack were on an episode of what TV show? Barbecue Pitmasters, yes. And this segment finds us talking about their time on the show. And if I'm not mistaken, this was also a highly rare occasion where I had a real-ass live in-studio guest. Michael McDearman at the time was on the Sam's Club tour. Now, for those of you that really go back into the history of this, especially the Sam's Club tour, it was the director was somebody else initially, and then Michael was doing, it was like the beef's what for dinner, beef portion support of that, and he was touring around with Sam's Club, but he was doing a big beef demo on site and was doing all sorts of great things with beef, cooking a lot of great tasting beef samples and all this stuff, but he'd been a fan of the show for quite a while. Now, at some point, the initial director got fired under suspicious activity, and we won't talk any more about that, but he was a former barbecue great, by the way. And Michael McDearman was promoted to tour director at that point and had a great run as tour director before that Sam's Club tour was subsequently lost, unfortunately. That was a great event. Loved it in many different ways. However, when he was doing the beef, there was a local Sam's Club outing at the Canton, Ohio Sam's Club, believe it or not, back in 2013. So Michael came with his big bull trailer and big pickup truck and stopped in front of my house and sat in for the show that night. One of, again, few, I can list them all off the top of my head. Doug Killeley from Mayfield, Ohio, sat in live from a show, a backyard barbecue enthusiast. Michael McDearman actually might have been in twice now that I'm thinking about it, but he was here in 2013. Billy Do-Rag Carroll has been live in studio in the show, a barbecue legend to me and perhaps nobody else. Barbecue jeweler to the stars, Stephen DeFranco, has been live in studio. My parents, of course, have been live in studio. But very few visits. I mean, because Cleveland continues to not be a destination across the nation, especially on Tuesdays, or you're on business on Tuesday and you can't get away to sit in on the show. But if you're ever in town, you're a fan of the show, hit me up. I'm more than happy to have you in. It'll be great. Anyway, McD was on the Sam's Club tour. He came in, sat in, and Jack was on a Skype call, I believe. And I went out to this event that following weekend, or that upcoming weekend. I got to hang out with, obviously, McD, had a bunch of great samples. But the highlight for me was getting to hang out with the pitmaster, the late, great Robert McGee from Munchin' Hogs at the Hilton, founder of Q39 Barbecue Restaurant in Kansas City, of course, through incredible fame and accolades. And for a few hours, I was sampling turn-ins. That was the first time I had ever had real competition money muscle in my life, and they were incredible. Holding that aside, what you'll hear in this segment is some really great discussion and insight from two guys that were on the Barbecue Pitmaster show, giving their real experience. Very cool, so make sure you're signed up to the podcast so you can get it this coming Friday. Also, if you would like to hear a previous guest or segment on the show, email John and let him know what you'd like to hear. Jon at thebbqcentralshow.com. Coming up on the rest of upcoming shows in August include visits from Meathead and Robert Moss and Leanne Whippen and Mike Lang from Another Pint Please, Susie Bullock from Hey Grill Hey, Chris Young from Combustion Inc., the Embedded Correspondence, and much more. Working on a Michael Simon. He wanted me to screw the whole schedule this evening, but I told him, no, I'm not going to do it. And for many different reasons, I'm not going to do it aside from the show being booked. I can't get you the microphone and stuff that I want you to sound right on, so I apologize. It's probably going to have to be at the end of the month of August, but we'll work it out. So we were messaging back and forth. We're getting it reworked out, but he could show up here live on this show here over the next 3 or 4 weeks, and we'll see about that. I want to take the rest of the time here this evening to talk about a relationship for this show that has come to an end, and I want to memorialize it right now after an 18-year run and maybe more. I got a call from somebody at the Barbecue Guru saying they were done sponsoring the show. No! It appears in a much less publicized move, especially given all the stuff that's been going down over the last week with Pit Boss, Traeger, Weber. Flame Boss picked up and bought the Barbecue Guru. I have no info on that other than the fact, as far as terms are concerned, no idea on anything as it relates to the transaction. However, it does not change the fact when you look at what companies stepped up to a completely new concept back in 2006, a little something called podcasting back then. The Barbecue Guru was the first one to jump in, did it with both feet. Few business relationships have spanned this kind of time, almost 2 decades. My relationship with the folks at the Barbecue Guru is longer than the one I have with my longest daughter by 2 years. Now, you might be asking yourself where the 18 years come from. Well, if you recall, prior to podcast, I owned a barbecue forum, the Barbecue Central Forum, very popular, grew organically, one of the meccas of barbecue forums back in the day, not to be compared with the Barbecue Brethren and, of course, the Barbecue Forum from Ray Basso, but mine was very popular. I had sold it a number of years ago, but I owned that forum, and I sold banner ads on the main page of the website to generate a pittance of an income. And that's where the relationship with the Barbecue Guru started. So tonight, knowing full well that when Bob Trudnak left a number of months ago, the show was on death watch, I celebrate and thank everybody at the Barbecue Guru for the support, the information, and most of all, the relationships that I have made within that company. I often say the difference between being a professional and not being a professional is getting paid. And the Barbecue Guru was the first company to legitimize me as a real professional in this industry, and I can't thank them enough for that. And now we'll see where Flame Boss comes on at some point, and who knows? There hasn't been any connection made there yet, but nothing's out of the question. But I do know that the Guru will be missed, and their continued innovations will be missed as well. Good luck to everybody in Warminster, Pennsylvania. All right, Emily Detweiler is in the green room. We'll get to her in just 1 second. I will talk to you about Primo Grills. What do we love about ceramic cookers? We love that they're fuel efficient. We love that you can achieve low and slow temperatures for traditional barbecue meats. We love that you can get rip-roaring hot for high-temperature grilling of steaks and other thin cuts. But what's missing in the everyday lineup of ceramic cookers? The real ability to do true two-zone cooking. Two-zone cooking is very important to both professional and backyard cooks alike. It's the best way to manage a fire and cook with confidence. However, getting a two-zone fire in a round ceramic cooker is not very realistic. Why? Because it's round. And a Primo grill and their game-changing oval design, the shape gives you the ability to execute a two-zone cook-up that you desire. It also gives you the other ceramic grill benefits as well. And if you really think about it, there's up to 60 different ways to configure the Primo cooker, so you're only limited by your culinary imagination. They have a pizza accessory insert. They have the Primo grill rotisserie accessory, bunch of other accessories, too, that have just been coming out month after month. So if you're into accessories, we all are in this portion of the industry, then you want to check out all that stuff, too. Much like Green Mountain Grills, Primo only sold through dealers. So go to their website, primogrill.com, find a dealer near you. Check out all the sizes of their ovals and buy the best one that fits your needs. Now, if you need a round ceramic cooker for whatever reason, they have round too. I'm suggesting the oval. Be the trendsetter in the neighborhood. Be the king of the cul-de-sac. Don't settle for round. Get oval. Primogrill.com. That's primogrill.com. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram as well. And on October 13th, we'll have a live remote podcast, broadcast, simulcast on the Internet Cast with Nick Bauer and a bunch of things going on at their dealer event somewhere in Illinois, I think. So stay tuned for that. We'll be back with Emily Detweiler right after this. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the #1 most downloaded barbecue and grilling podcast anywhere. The Barbecue Central Show. Howard Stern, Jim Rome, Dan Patrick, and Greg Rempe. The Mountain Rushmore of talk show entertainment. Now, let's get back to the Barbecue Central Show.
Welcome back. This portion of the show being brought to you by Smithfield. Head on over to smithfield.com right now for recipes as well as tips and tricks from well-known live-fire cooks like Darren Worth and Jess Pryles and Giles Cridland. With mouth-watering flavor, no artificial ingredients, Smithfield Fresh Pork is quite simply some of the finest pork money can buy. It's the trusted choice of top cooks like me and other competitors for use at those competitions and at home, smithfield.com. My first guest in the second hour, someone many of us know by name and by face, whether it be through her time at Smithfield, the aforementioned, most recently serving as CEO for the KCBS for roughly the past 3 years or so. And let's race to the hotline without further ado. And welcome back, friend of the show, Emily Detweiler. Hey, Emily.
Hey, Greg. How are you?
I am absolutely spectacular. Appreciate you joining me this evening. And we have plenty to talk about. I am going to diverge off of the small game plan that we had set during sound check and dig into the meat of the program here this evening right off the jump, and then we can get into some other stuff just to make sure that we're getting through here. So we had heard,
good.
What was it, like 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, there was a news release. Maybe it was longer than that. Everything's is always like 2 to 3 weeks for me. There was a news release that had come out that Emily Detweiler was going to be stepping down as CEO, and this was going to happen by the end of July, which was just a couple days ago. So for the folks that are new to the live fire industry, or they had heard about Competition Barbecue on the most recent Barbecue USA that you were on, and we can talk about that here in a few moments, but how did you come to be the CEO of KCBS?
Well, that's a great question. I kind of started actually from my experiences at Smithfield. So, for those who are new to the show, I was the director of marketing for Smithfield on their fresh pork side of the business for about 5 years. And that really led me to build programs in the barbecue space. As you said, I was a friend of the show. And one thing led to the next, and I got a call from the KCBS Board of Directors in 2019 asking me if I would consider coming on board. And after a series of interviews and all of the typical stuff that happens, I agreed to join them and, really helped lead the organization into the future. So, as you know, the Wells family really helped launch KCBS, and Carolyn is still there, but more in a historian role. And so they were really looking for me to help truly drive the organization into the future. And I loved my time there. And, it was certainly not an easy decision for me to decide to move on to something else. But I just had an opportunity that was amazing that I just couldn't turn down. So anyway, I was there for, like you said, 3 years, and obviously had a lot of great opportunities. And I definitely want to talk about some of the TV show because that was so fun. But obviously also some challenging times. And so, I feel very proud of the staff, of the board, of all of the volunteers, all of the reps, et cetera, that we really were able to put together programs and plans to get through what turned out to be a very long time of COVID. So, in an organization where you're literally bringing people together, having something like COVID was pretty devastating, but we were able to manage through that. And truthfully, that is something that I'm very proud of.
Let's dig in a little bit more, Emily. I've done the show for 16 years in some form or fashion, and for 16 years, some louder than others. There were always two refrains at the end of each calendar year, and I'm paraphrasing here a little bit. Number one, judges suck. Number two, the board sucks. So as you take over the CEO role, aside from those first two items that never seem to die, what were the biggest hurdles that you had to deal with immediately to get the ship pointed in the right direction that you wanted to go in?
Well, I think immediately we had some just overall business operation needs that needed to be looked at. And, the way things had grown in the past, how KCBS got to be successful in the past wasn't necessarily going to be what was going to make it successful in the future. So that was really one of the first things that we did. Was really looking through, all of the business expenses and truly treating it like a business and not just, not just managing it loosey-goosey, I guess I would say. So that was one of the first things that I did. And then COVID hit, like literally just 6 months in, it seemed like. So that really required a lot of planning. Likewise, we worked on the KCBS World Invitational and really trying to elevate that. So, the first year I think was an interesting idea and something that was needed. And we took that and built upon it to really help make it more exciting and truly a world championship. So, I would like to say, I know some people say the board sucks. I would highly disagree with that, because in my experience, so in 3 years of working with different boards, I can tell you that they work really hard behind the scenes to try to put together great programs to keep the organization going in the right direction. And my hat is off to anyone willing to serve. And so for those who say that the board sucks, what I would tell you is get involved. So I've always been a big believer in, if it's one thing to make a complaint, it's another thing entirely to come with a solution. And so, we had a lot of people that were really involved on various committees, some who agreed to, put their name in the hat to go out and serve the board in a much bigger way. And to me, that's where the real change happens. So, it's easy to sit on the sidelines and complain about things. It's much harder to roll up your sleeves and do the work to make a positive difference. And that is exactly what those committee members and the board members and the International Board of Managers and the reps, they're all doing that on a consistent basis. And so I would highly encourage people to get involved.
Is part of the issue here, I'm speculating now, and nothing to not casting dispersions on the board or volunteers or whatever, but specifically to the board, are there just too damn many board members for there to be any type of real agenda to get pushed through because there's just too many people?
Well, actually, that's something that the board has been working on for the last couple of years, and they put plans in place to reduce the number each year. So the goal is to get it to 9, and I think that with the election this year, that'll get it to 10. But the goal would be to have 9 members of the board. And I think that's actually going to be a much more manageable size, because invariably you're going to have, some people, when you get to a board of that or any group that's that large, you'll have a few people who just life takes over and they're not able to contribute perhaps as much as they thought they might be able to. You get a lot of opinions, but I think keeping it to a more reasonable size like a 9 is going to be something that will be very positive for the organization moving forward. So, I think that'll make it very manageable and really eliminate any of the redundancies, if you will.
I don't know how many people know this or not, but you're actually not the first CEO of KCBS. There was another person in there for, I don't know if it was 6 months or so. And I'd heard from some folks that were pretty close to the situation, didn't go very well. There was an ensuing lawsuit to clean that up. Is that something that you also had to deal with coming in, or had that portion more or less resolved itself before you took over?
That had pretty much resolved itself when I took over. So that wasn't necessarily something that I needed to get too involved in.
I'm going to make a speculative statement here, and you can answer however you want. My thought as to why you entertain another opportunity inside or outside live fire is because there are some folks on that board that were just too involved with day-to-day, or they want to tell you how to do their job, or there were agendas to push, too involved in the fact that the CEO should be able to make decisions and keep the ship or the vision running forward. In other words, there were people on the board that were just unrelenting to push an agenda. You finally grew weary of it. So when an opportunity availed itself, you were definitely open to listening.
That is a wildly speculative statement, and I would say that that is a bit overreaching, quite honestly. No, in all honesty, my career is really just that. It's my career, and No, there wasn't anybody that, pushed me out, if you will, or made me want to leave. Like I said, I loved what I was doing there. And, this is just, I have an opportunity to really get back into the grocery world in a much bigger capacity, longer term. And that was what was exciting to me. So, no, I genuinely appreciated and enjoyed working with everybody. I think anytime you're talking about a board that's pretty involved, you are going to have some kind of subsets of agendas, if you will. But for the most part, those were pretty well intentioned. And so, no, I would not say that there was like an overarching push or any individual that made me want to leave. That was not the case at all. I just, I still have a lot of progression to go in my career, and this was a really interesting opportunity in a large and growing company that I just couldn't say no to.
Emily Detweiler joining us here on the show. So now that you are officially out of the CEO role, give me a few things that are good with KCBS right now.
Oh, there's so many good things. I will tell you one of the things that was so much fun to work on right before I left was the Barbecue USA show. And it's been fun to watch that over the last couple of weeks as it's come out. We got a call at the beginning of the year this year asking, if we could help identify a couple of different barbecue contests across the US. And so in looking at Michael Simon's schedule, working with the production crew, and then really trying to highlight some KCBS contests across the country that we knew had great participation. Also, we were able to help provide some guidance in terms of some of the background of some of the teams and why certain teams might be interesting to follow. And so there was a lot of behind the scenes work that we did to help put that together. So seeing it come to life, you see obviously the teams, you see some of the judges, it's heartwarming to me. And so it was such a fun process to be part of, and I'm really hopeful that obviously the show does fantastic, and they maybe pick up another season, because I think it helps. It helps with the entire sport of barbecue. And so that was really fun. Other things that are good. You asked me a little bit about judging. The J-Cup, the online certification or recertification, think of it as continuing education. That program is really good. And we are getting, well, I say it's going to take me a long time to really realize I'm not there every day anymore. But hey, I'm still a lifetime member, so I'll always be around. Anyway, no, the KCBS got a ton of great feedback, both from naysayers who, at first were staunchly against having to take it. And, the teams like it because they like that the judges are more current and making sure that they are keeping themselves kind of in top shape, if you will, for judging. So that was very positive. The Johnny Trigg shootout, that has been very positive in Texas and a ton of fun. We've had a lot of great involvement on that. Likewise, we had just launched a partnership with the VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars. So I'm excited to see how that comes to life, because many of the posts around the US are interested in having contests at their post, or likewise judging classes. And again, there's a lot of reasons why that's good for them, and a lot of reasons why it's great for the teams and the judges to have more opportunities to participate for KCBS. So, those were a couple of the things that I think were really going well for KCBS. And so, there's a lot of great things that are on the horizon, and I'm just very excited now. Obviously, I'll be watching and cheering from the sidelines, but I'm excited to see the group continue and bring some of those things to life.
Emily, what are one or two really important things that KCBS needs to either continue down the road with that's new, or that had been expressed and is now working into something formative, or they need to fix or tweak to continue to better the situation?
Yeah, I think the short answer I would have is just continuing to drive engagement. And to me, that means keeping people who are cooking today, keeping them cooking, cooking more often, and also creating programs to bring more people in, whether that's, high school or college programs, or just other types of things. The One Meat program has been very successful So just different types of ideas like that get more people involved. I would say that's definitely something that's going to need to happen. The other thing I would say is, again, there's so much passion. I heard you even talking about it right before my segment with the old Sam's Club tour, something like that to try to create another program to bring around the country. I think something like that would be an amazing opportunity. So those are some of the things that, have been discussed. And it's just a function, I think, of time for when something like that is viable.
A question you won't answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What's the bigger bust? The initial National Grilling Society project that came out a handful of years ago, or the latest version of the National Steak Competition, or whatever it's called, that's currently in place?
I'm going to say the National Grilling.
Oh, yeah? Good for you. What's the one thing that you are most proud of during your time as CEO of Kansas City Barbecue Society?
Oh, my gosh. To have to pick just one. Well, I'm really proud of the staff. I have to say that. I'm extremely proud of the staff for everything that they did to keep everything going during COVID, particularly, and to still come out on the other side and to grow. And they grew professionally, they grew personally, they were able to help us grow the number of contests and things like that. So I would say that first. And second of all, I would really say elevating the World Invitational. I think each year it's gotten to a more and more exciting place for everybody who's participating. Obviously, we've also been able to grow much more meaningful partnerships with our brand partners that are part of that. And so, again, I take a lot of pride in that because I think that it's a model that's sustainable for the future. And those partnerships, those dollars are going directly back to KCBS. And so by doing that, we're able to put it into programs that mean something for the members. And so that to me is something that I am extremely proud of.
You had referenced the grocery industry a handful of minutes ago. If you don't mind my asking, what are you doing next?
Yeah, so I'm going to Associated Wholesale Grocers, which, if you're not aware of who they are a massive wholesaler that happens to be based in Kansas City, and they've got 9 different divisions across the Midwest and some of the Southeast, and they supply almost 5,000 independent grocery stores across, again, the Central Midwest and the Southeast. So, your mom and pop grocery stores who might just own one store. You might have groups like here in Kansas City, we've got Price Chopper. They easily have over 100 stores. But these are grocery stores of their communities who, are really servicing their community members. And so I have taken on a role of Executive Director of Category Management Execution, which is a very long, silly title, but it means that I'll be working with the business team, the merchants, to really help drive those category plans that come in, and that the merchants work really hard with vendors to create, and actually create the planograms and the mapping of where the products are going to drive the greatest profitability at shelf for those retailers, those grocery stores. And then I will also lead the teams that are actually going to go out into those various stores and set those shelves accordingly to drive that profitable growth for those stores. So that's what I'm going to start with. I'm sure I'll be doing more things, but that's what I'll be starting with across the entire store. So it's exciting. It takes me back to a lot of my retail days, even prior to Smithfield, when I was working with retailers all over the United States on developing their private label programs. So I'm excited about it. I'll have branded and private label, but we'll have these big category initiatives. So they just did a massive charcoal reset, for example. And we'll be working on some of the proteins and barbecue sauces and things like that. So as I have opportunity to drive influence within the organization and talk about barbecue and the strength, that barbecue plays both within those categories and also as an opportunity for these independent grocers to drive connections with their communities, you can bet I'll be doing that.
Well, we certainly appreciate the time you're spending with us here this evening. It's Emily Detweiler, former CEO of KCBS. and now with Associated Wholesale Grocers there in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Emily, thanks so much for the time and continued success.
Thanks, Greg. And I wish you continued success on this show. I was just thinking it's a much more sophisticated way of getting into the show than 8 years ago when I was waiting for the call from Ohio, on my phone. So
yes.
kudos to you.
Well, thank you, and thanks for showing up. Always appreciate the time. There she is, Emily Detweiler right there from formerly from KCBS, now Associated Wholesale Grocers, which is huge. Here's another thing, right? It's like one of those things where you don't realize it's this big, but there they are servicing really big independent grocery stores. There's some right here in Cleveland that are existing. She said Price Chopper in Kansas City, but Price Chopper is also in New York. There was a Price Chopper when I lived in Saratoga. Maybe that's not the same thing. Maybe there's two different Price Choppers. I doubt it, but there's probably the same thing. Joe Martinez is in the green room. You can see him right there. He's very excited. He's ready to go to talk about mayo and brisket. Before Joe, I'm going to hit you up with my guy, David McDowell. I got to tell you, if you haven't contacted davidleans.com/BBQ and signed up to take advantage of his health and wellness coaching, you're missing out. I'm now in week 5. I'm down, what did I weigh in at yesterday? 173. I think I went in at 188. The menu is good for me. I can stick to it, but I don't have to stick to it. But I love a challenge. I love the fact that I know I'm going to eat every day and I don't have to listen to what's next. I love the muscle programs that he's putting me on as far as weightlifting is concerned. And we do the weekly check-ins. We talk about tweaks to the menu if we want. We talk about eat more of this or eat more of that to make sure that my calories are right. It's not work. It's not a diet. It's just somebody holding me accountable, which is what I had talked about for months and months before I got on it myself, just to give it a whirl. It's working out great. You should try it. I think you would really like it. If you need a little extra effort, if you need a little extra support as far as getting into a little bit better shape or getting a diet that you can eat around, and hey, you cheat here or there, everybody can't be perfect. But he even tells you when you can cheat, or if you're at a restaurant that you didn't plan to, take a couple shots of the menu. He'll give you best options to eat. It's great. It's exactly as he says it is in the ad. Come on. davidleans.com. That's davidleans.com/BBQ to sign up. Do it now. Tell him I sent you. Maybe we can do it together. We'll share shirtless pics of each other. No, we won't. No, we won't. We're back with Joe Martinez right after this. Stick around. Be right back.
You're listening to the #1 most downloaded barbecue and grilling podcast anywhere. The Barbecue Central Show. Let's get back to a guy who has more experience giving you his opinion than he actually has cooking. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
We thank Emily Detweiler for joining us last segment and answering all of those questions, whether she wanted to or not. But she did. She answered more than I thought she would. That was great. Back in the day, watches were made to be worn in the pocket. After World War II, wristwatches came into vogue, and the pocket watch quickly became an afterthought, finding their way into sock drawers and scrap heaps. That's a tragedy. Enter VorticWatch.com, helping bridge the gap between America's storied watch manufacturing past and bringing it to present day, where wristwatches are finding incredible popularity. And here's the coolest part. Each watch that they make is unique and one of a kind. Vortic, founded on the motto that America wasn't assembled, it was built. Check out VorticWatches.com for more info or to buy. I don't know if you are all aware of this or not, but I invented this whole craze that is taking over the nation, which happens to be using mayo as a binder on brisket. Deuce Raymond tried it and loved it. Recently, one of my most loyal fans and listeners and watchers, Joe Martinez, a budding YouTube sensation as well, reached out to me and said he was going to do a video on it, which he did. It's on his YouTube channel right now for you to check out. But we're going to break it all down for you right here, right now. So let's go ahead and race to the Barbecue Central Show hotline and welcome in first-timer to the show and friend of this show, Joe Martinez. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Greg. How you doing?
I'm fabulous. Joe, what the fuck with Clubhouse issues? I've had enough of it. What's going on with that? Every time I go to you, no Joe, Sam the cooking guy, busting balls at an incredible rate, and I've had enough of it.
Yeah, no.
What was that?
I said I deleted the app. It wasn't working, so.
Oh, all right. Well, good. Beat it, Clubhouse. Before we get into the Mayo-binder recap, can you give us a quick background on you, where you are in the country, if you barbecue full-time, things like this?
Sure. My name is Joe Martinez. I'm the owner and operator of Smokin' Joe's Pit Barbecue on YouTube. It's just my side hustle, if you will. I've got a full-time job, a corporate job of 23 years with O'Reilly Auto Parts, and I live in a small city in the far west side of Texas by the name of El Paso, Texas.
Small city called El Paso? Never heard of it. Wow, O'Reilly?
That's it. That's the one.
Man, I love those commercials. How did you find the Barbecue Central show?
You know, it's back when I started on YouTube, and you just popped up as a recommended video to watch, and I started watching it. Never did podcasts or anything like that, and I said, "Oh, this guy's pretty cool." And then the guest that you had was always about barbecue. So I said, "Man, I've got to subscribe and watch."
Joe Martinez joining us here on the show, the pitmaster of Smokin' Joe's Pit Barbecue, and of course, you can find his channel over on YouTube, which is Smokin' Joe's Pit Barbecue as well. So, Joe, you reached out to me not too long ago to say that you were excited about my newest trend that I've given the live fire barbecue and grilling community, which is the mayo on beef, or specifically brisket trend that I created all by myself, and nobody did it before me. So before we really get into it, is this something you had ever heard of anyone doing before, or by chance, had you ever done it before?
No, never heard of it. I've always played around with different type of binders, and when I heard you talking about it, actually you were asking some of your guests if they've ever used mayonnaise on beef, not brisket in general. And obviously I love to smoke briskets, and I took your idea of trying mayonnaise as a binder, and I said, let's give it a shot. We're always looking for ways to change up the barbecue game a little bit. And when I heard you talk about it, I said,
it's hard to not have any expectations when it comes to things like this. Did you have any, and how were you able to push those aside and work in a non-biased position? Because that's really what we're looking for here, right? We want straight-up information without any slants.
Exactly. I was a little nervous, to be honest with you, because I've used olive oil as a binder in the past, and the rub just slipped off. And I was afraid, knowing that mayonnaise consists of oil, that the rub would wash away. And I was wrong. I mean, it worked flawlessly, quite honestly.
So let's get into it. Give us the rundown of prep of the brisket, and then when you actually dug your hands into a vat of mayo, or however you put it in my mind, I just want to see you going in with two hands into this big commercial vat, slamming it down. But tell us how you did the whole deal from the prep side.
Yeah. So as far as the brisket trim, it was my normal trim. I trim a lot of the fat. I'm pretty aggressive on the trimming part. And, when it came to the mayonnaise, it was kind of weird. It was a big mess, number one. And it was like frosting a cake. So it really stuck to the brisket. I've used mustard as a binder in the past, and mustard, you can see through the mustard and be able to look at the brisket. Well, the mayonnaise was completely covered, again, like a frosted white cake. So I was like, man, this is going to be interesting. And, at that point I applied salt, which if you've ever applied salt on salt or something white, you just can't see it. So that was a little difficult. But then when I started applying the pepper was the second rub that I applied. like you could really see it. Like it was actually kind of nice to see that contrast of the black and the white. And then I applied some garlic powder was the last rub that I used, or seasoning, I should say, and patted it all down, make sure I got the edges, of course, and flipped it over and applied the same rub, the rub equally as I did on the flat side. And it was strange. It was strange at first, just looking at the brisket. But I threw in my smoker at 275 degrees and smoked it for 4 hours. And I got to tell you, at the 4-hour mark, I hadn't opened my smoker, so I was a little nervous when I opened the door. And
like,
I
what do
was
you think
surprised.
in your mind? What do you think you're going to be seeing? Some like marshmallow looking brisket?
Yeah, I honestly thought, like, have you seen a hairless cat before?
Yeah, of course.
So that's what I thought the brisket was going to look like, thinking that the rub would wash off or something. And much to my surprise, I was like, man, look at the bark on this thing. And at the 4-hour mark, I usually start to spritz with apple cider vinegar and water, or just a water spritz to moisten up the brisket, if it's drying up a little bit. So I looked at the brisket, it was really moist and the bark was set. And I said, you know what, I'm not going to spritz, but I wanted to give it 2 more hours just to build the bark, a little darker bark. And when I came back at the 6-hour mark to pull the brisket right before I wrapped it, that's when I was like, wow, look at the bark on this thing. And again, I would normally spritz the brisket with some kind of spritz before I wrap it in butcher paper, and I didn't have to because the bark was still really moist. So I wrapped it up, popped it back in my smoker for 2 more hours, and it hit about 203 degrees internal, pulled it out, and just kind of opened up the butcher paper, let it vent a little bit. I rested it for 12 hours, or held it for 12 hours at 150 degrees. The next morning I sliced into it, and I got to tell you, the butcher paper was drenched. Like, I've smoked briskets in the past where the butcher paper, it's drenched or whatever, but this one was completely drenched in tallow. And I've never had a brisket without adding anything to the wrap, like tallow. That paper was drenched, and I believe some of that was mayo and some of that was tallow.
You said something that has completely blown my mind that we're going to have to circle back to here in just a second. Tactily speaking, as you're picking it up, when you put your fingers in it, on it to pick up, put in the paper, like your fingers don't go in at all. I mean, it's set up otherwise. It's just like a normal brisket once you've kind of cooked through it. And I assume it's just kind of, for lack of a better term, melted off.
Yeah, I'll tell you the one interesting thing when it comes to the rub, and picking it up, and you kind of put your fingers on the bottom to check the tenderness. That bark was, most bark is a little hard, I guess, if you will, but this bark was really soft, like very kind of a marshmallowy texture, like a pillow, if you will. So I was surprised, but that bark was on that brisket. It was not coming off.
You said you held the brisket at 150 degrees for 12 hours. That's SOP for Joe Martinez that's Smoking Joe's Pit Barbecue?
Well, that's something that's really common in the barbecue restaurant industry here in Texas. That's how they're able to cook, 150 briskets a day, for example, to cook that volume, and hold them in big food warmers, if you will. That's the only way that you can feed all the people that come to your restaurant. So I'm looking at opening up a food trailer here pretty soon, and I've been practicing that holding process for about a year now. And I got to tell you, if you guys have never held a brisket for 12 hours, I mean, you can put it in your oven at the lowest temperature. It's probably 160, 170. Rest it overnight. Your house is going to smell beautiful in the morning, but it's magical. I got to tell you, it is magical.
All right, I'm going to have to give that a try next time I do a brisket. Initial thoughts as you're getting ready to slice and taste. You had talked about unwrapping it. You talked the excessive amount of lubrication that this brisket put off. But what are you thinking about? What do you think you're gonna be tasting here in just a few short seconds?
I was thinking I was going to taste the mayonnaise, like hardcore mayonnaise flavor, the lemon, and not
You a
necessarily
mayonnaise
the egg
fan?
yolks.
Like, do you care? Do
I
you
love
care for
mayonnaise.
mayonnaise? Okay, so
I
it
love
wasn't
mayonnaise.
scaring you per se, or was it?
No, it wasn't. I was just afraid that I would get a little bit of the mayonnaise flavor. Um, slicing into it. Number one, I thought that the bark was just going to break off. Not thinking it was going to hold together. But as I started slicing it, it was beautiful. It was like the perfect slices. And then obviously when I tasted it, I was blown away of the flavor of that brisket. It just melted in the mouth. The flavor of the bark with the rubs, and it was just nice and silky. It was totally different than using mustard or no binder whatsoever. It was a really good taste.
And no mayo flavor, just to be clear, in case anybody's coming in late and hearing us talking about mayo as a binder on brisket.
No mayonnaise flavor whatsoever. Again, I think the mayonnaise did what I was hoping it was going to do, was really grab that bark and hold on to it. And it did a better job than I normally use mustard as a binder.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that mayonnaise did a much better job of holding on to that rub. And the results were amazing.
Let's be even more honest with each other here, Joe. Is this something that you would do regularly going forward? If yes, why? If no, why not?
Absolutely. I'll do it again. As backyard barbecue pitmasters, if you will, we're always chasing that better brisket. And, along the way you find that, hey, this works better than what I was doing before. And now, somebody had commented on that video that, Joe, you've got to make the ultimate flavor bomb brisket, which would be those things that I have found along the way that work. And mayonnaise would be on that list of things that I would do with that flavor bomb brisket, if you will, like the ultimate brisket. I would definitely use mayonnaise as a binder.
What do you think the next trend in barbecue is going to be? We all know brisket, mayo as a binder for brisket is raging across the face of the earth right now. But what's going to be the next trend, do you think? You got your finger on the pulse.
I honestly think that mayonnaise has not taken off yet, number one. I think that people are just getting a hold of this, Greg, and you will be sitting on a mayonnaise throne here pretty soon.
Yeah, take that, Dickie Paste.
Being the pioneer. The barbecue doesn't change much, but as I mentioned earlier, I think people are always chasing that better brisket, and I think things will continue to evolve. 40 years from now, or even 10 years from now, Greg, I think that barbecue is going to be different than what we're doing today. I mean, look how much it's already changed. Yeah. Look how many more people are cooking barbecue in their backyards as opposed to 10 years ago.
Are you watching Barbecue USA on the Food Network with my best pal, Michael Simon?
I am. I love it. Great show.
Love it?
Love it.
What do you like best about it?
Quite honestly, we've got, the barbecue community on YouTube is fairly small, and we've got people on that show like Chicken Fried Barbecue that made an appearance, and it's good to see him. He and I started on YouTube at the very same time, so it's really nice to see Michael Simon, an awesome chef, and taking barbecue and showing it to the world, if you will, the competition barbecue. Fred Robles as well is on the show, so anything barbecue related is something that attracts me. I mean, and I think it'll attract most backyard barbecue pitmasters for sure.
Any cool videos coming up you want to tease us for to keep us interested to watch the next release?
Yeah, actually, I just released a video today using MSG, and I invited a few neighbors to try a non-MSG brisket versus an MSG brisket. That was a really good video, really popular. Just released it this morning, and it's got quite a bit of views. I'm also going to be making a barbacoa sausage. I got into sausage making probably a year and a half ago, and
look at that setup behind you, for crying
sausage.
out loud. That's a real deal sausage setup behind it.
There you go. Yeah, that's all my stuffer, my grinders and mixers and stuff. But yeah, I've got a barbacoa sausage. It's going to be kind of like a boudin sausage, where everything is cooked, with the exception of this being barbacoa or beef cheeks, if you will. and I'm going to stuff them into a sausage and smoke them, and we'll see how it turns out.
He is a longtime Centralite. He is somebody that took the bull by the proverbial horns, and by bull I mean mayo, and slathered it as a binder for brisket, and it has been nothing but success. He is a budding YouTube sensation, of course, so subscribe to him over there at Smokin' Joe's Pit Barbecue. Joe, really appreciate the time tonight, the breakdown of the Mayo-bindered brisket, and we will continue to watch you on the YouTubes.
Thank you, Greg, and any more great ideas, throw them my way.
All right, there he is. Joe Martinez right there from Smokin' Joe's Pit Barbecue. Make sure that you are watching him or subscribe. Smash the subscribe button and punch the bell and whatever the hell else all those YouTubers say. Do all of it. And then you'll be alerted when the new stuff's up. I guarantee the video he did this morning, everybody loved the MSG brisket better. Don't tell anybody this, but like for the last 6 months, I've been, I use Accent, that's MSG. I use it on everything I cook, and nobody's any the wiser in this house except going, did you change it? Why? Something change it? No, it just tastes good. Yeah, MSG. But enough about that and how I'm poisoning my family. Head on over to BigPapaSmokers.com right now for all your barbecue needs. Big Papa Smokers, the one-stop online shop for all things barbecue, a curated selection of only the best outdoor cooking and grilling supplies, getting you on the path to better barbecue results in no time. Big Papa's known for their championship rubs and seasonings, popular flavors like Sweet Money, Cattle Prod, Cash Cow, all proven winners on the competition circuit and in backyards. Offering 13 perfectly balanced flavors that transform ordinary meals into extraordinary. Also, the owner of Granny's Barbecue Sauce. So if you're looking for a new go-to sauce that will please everybody, Granny's traditional yet powerful flavor will remind you of why you fell in love with barbecue in the first place. And aside from the selection of rubs and sauces, Big Papa's offering the very best cookers available on the market today. If you're looking for a versatile smoker that's easy to use, check out that Mac 2-Star General Pellet Cooker. If you're not sure of what grill you need, send them an email. Ask all the questions. They will make sure that you're outfitted with all of the greatest information so you can make the best and most educated buying decision that you can possibly make. What could be better than that? I don't know. The number is 877-828-0727. That's 877-828-0727. Or you can shop their website, which is, once again, BigPopSmokers.com. That's BIGPOPPA Smokers.com. We are back to wrap the show right after this. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Whole packers, full racks, legs and thighs, injecting butts. If you've never heard this before, you might think you found the best XXX show ever. Let's get back to the most homoerotic host out there today, Greg Rempe.
All right. We thank Joe Martinez from Smokin' Joe's Pit Barbecue for joining me last segment, giving us a full recap of the mayo as a binder for brisket. I mean, I'm not bragging here, but I just got a Instagram DM from CEO of Traeger Grills, Jeremy Andrus, saying that he liked the new video. Thank goodness. Hopefully no lawyers are going to be coming down on me. If you're not following me on social media, next week I will play for you the latest animation of the Barbecue Central show, which will find a portion of my conversation that I had back in February of this year with Jeremy Andrus from Traeger Grills, animating it. It's pretty funny. The actual audio was from the interview itself, but it takes on a whole different situation when you actually see the animation, how we amped up Jeremy, how Damien uses his artistic abilities on me, and I'm telling you, if you watch it before we replay it again next week, if you can pause the video in some way, pause it like every 3 or 4 seconds, and then look into the background and look at pieces of paper that are just in this. Look on the chalkboards that he's got up there. Look in the back of the weight rooms. the attention to detail, the minutia, and I mean minutia in the best way possible, that he is picking up and putting in these things, it is insane. So if you haven't watched it yet on Instagram or TikTok because you don't believe in any of that, hey, no problem. I get it. But you will be privy to it next week in the open of the show, or maybe it'll be in the second hour, depending on how things shake out. We'll see from there. But be ready for the latest and greatest Barbecue Central Show's edition, brought to you by Doodles and Things, who's available for contract. All the way back in the first hour was Malcom Reed, and then it was first timer of the show, Wes Wright from cookoutnews.com. Make sure you visit his website for his sign up for his newsletter that comes out every Saturday. Second hour, Emily Detweiler, former CEO of KCBS, talking about why she left and things she was proud of, things they need to work on, all that fun stuff. Now at Associated Wholesale Grocers. And closing out the show was friend and longtime listener and pitmaster of Smokin' Joe's Pit Barbecue, Joe Martinez, talking about his Mayo-bindered brisket, which evidently is incredible. Dare I say life-changing? I'll say it, life-changing. Big show planned for you next week. As always, Meathead is in. Robert F. Moss is in, amongst others. Leanne Whippet. How do I always leave you? September 11th, 2001. I will never forget. Until next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. This is your program host of Proud U.S. American, Greg Rempe. Good night now!
Hello, everybody. This is Gary Vaynerchuk, host of Wine Library TV, a.k.a. WLTV, and this is BBQ Central.